Gather around, gather around.
This is GC360.
No. This is a new segment. This is...
Behind the Bobcats!
Hello, Bobcats. I'm Andrew Brown. I hope you're having a Bobtastic Thursday, and we're back with another fantastic show this week. We're going to see what's behind the Bobcat this week. I'm here with Mia Simmons, who is co-president of Turning Point USA, which is the GCSU conservative group here on campus. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I want to ask, how did you become involved with GCSU's Turning Point?
So my freshman year, I heard about Turning Point on campus, and I went to a meeting, and I was the only one there. So I was like, you know what? Let's bring this back. Let's make this club bigger and better than ever and spread like conservative and biblical values on campus. So I was able to help revitalize the chapter my sophomore year, go to national events and represent the school there, meet so many new people from across the country and political speakers. And I hope to bring that same momentum on campus this year with my co-president, Lauren.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had a really big role in kind of making this like a bigger thing here.
Yes.
What are some of the goals then that you have for Turning Point here on campus?
Well, first and foremost, just to be like a voice for students, to build a community for conservative students on campus, and just be like a light as well. Also, I want to host like bigger events, like bigger speakers for the community as well, because as we saw with the vigil a few weeks ago, the community really wants to be involved with this organization, and they're really encouraged by us being here on campus. So
yeah, I think the community turnout, like you said, has been big, especially in light of recent events. Mm-hmm. I also saw that y'all were part of a Fox News digital article.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
That was crazy. So my friend and co-president Lauren Jones, she has friends in the White House, and so they were able to get us a spot on Fox in the article. And that was just like an incredible experience. I never thought anything like that would happen. It was an honor to represent not only Turning Point, but GCSU in that article. And yeah, it was just an incredible experience.
You said she has friends in the White House?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome. So was it like a videoed interview or more of like a written kind of thing?
It was just like a Zoom call that they put into like, they put a bunch of videos together of students from across the country just talking about what Charlie Kirk meant to us. And then they put it into an article form. And then they made another article based off that article, so just like progressed from there. But yeah. Yeah,
that's an exciting opportunity. I'm
sure
that was a big step for y'all. Well, speaking of other articles, as I'm sure you know, Nicholas Creel, who's a professor here at GCSU, he recently had an opinion piece posted on the New York Times where he talked about being y'all's advisor and kind of being able to work with some of y'all. What has that been like to see, you know, your advisor post on such a large platform about y'all?
That was incredible. When I saw it, I was like, wow, this is going to have a positive impact on so many people. In today's world, we really need civil discourse, and I think that article really highlights that. And he did a great job writing it, as always. But it also brings a lot of attention to the school and just shows like how faculty and students here really work together and really create an environment where true education is forged. So
yeah, I definitely think he did a good job of touching a lot on the article. What has been your experience just with Creel as your advisor since you've been a part of Turning Point?
So I've only like talked to him on the phone for a few times, and we've emailed back and forth, but definitely after recent events, we've been in contact more. But I've never met him in person, so I hope to do that at some point and learn more about him. But yeah, he's been such a great help to the organization and really just giving us everything we need. So
yeah, and I understand too, just from reading his article, he's very honest about his own political beliefs. Was there any like sort of initial reactions to having someone who might have opposing viewpoints in your organization at first, or was that kind of just a very natural
No,
process?
I was kind of impressed when I saw that he definitely differs from our values at Turning Point. I was impressed that he would care enough to like help us and give us the right to express ourselves. So yeah, and I love reading his articles as well. I think they're all great, well written, and we really need just more opinions out in the marketplace of ideas to build our own beliefs and also challenge them. So
Yeah, and so you've been able to connect with a faculty member who might not always see eye to eye with y'all. How would you approach students or outreach to students who might have opposing ideas than y'all? How do y'all try to outreach to that?
well, we would love for them to come talk to us or like host a debate in a cordial way. We table on campus. We'll get people come up to us like concerned sometimes. But that's just a time for us to just discuss our differing ideas and hear each other out. It's not a time to like take videos and like get views or whatever, like, oh, look at me, like, destroying this argument. No, it's just a time to have like a simple conversation and just enjoy our First Amendment rights because we are very fortunate to have those in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad y'all can take advantage of that and the way that y'all feel like you can. Has there been any other challenges just being a part or being Turning Point here at GCSU?
Not really any big challenges. The school has been really helpful with the vigil and things like that. They've been really supportive. They treat us like any other student group here on campus, so we appreciate that. I will say that we have issues. People consistently take down our flyers, but that's been like a 2-year thing. Or like some people will like deface them or whatever, but that's just something we've learned to adapt to. We just keep putting them up, so.
No, I completely understand that. Speaking of the vigil, I saw on y'all's Instagram, it looked like a very huge turnout, got a lot of traction on social media. What was that like to, obviously under those circumstances, difficult to have to host something like that, but what was it like to see that kind of turnout and see that kind of support from the community?
I was in awe of the community. It was like I posted the info flyer like 2 days before, and then we got like over 300 people, and I was just like amazed that so many people like turned out. And honestly, it was just like an encouragement because like the week before we had our first meeting at the same spot and only 2 people showed up. And then we had that event and over like 300 like community members, like church members, they all showed up. So that was just an incredible like encouragement to see like people care about our presence on campus and want us to like make change. So
yeah, how do y'all want to expand on that moving forward, do you think?
We definitely want to host some big speakers. Still in the works on that right now, working with like my regional manager on that, and have more events where the community is involved as well because we owe it to them. They've given us so much support. So
yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of the community, I saw y'all had that billboard, right? Who was able to get in contact with?
Well, actually, that was parents of GCSU students here, and
Really?
they decided to like share that with us. So I posted that on Instagram as well, which that has been crazy. So many people from like the Trump administration and famous like political speakers like Riley Gaines or like even like musician Brittany Aldean, they all like the post. So that's been crazy to get like so many views on that. And I think it really just shows how the Milledgeville community really came together during that tough time. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I would definitely say they did. Well, going back to Nicholas Creel for a second, so you enjoy reading his opinion pieces. What do you get from that as someone who may not, always be the first person to agree with what he's putting out?
It's just, I feel like that's what true education is. It's just challenging yourself. Sometimes I'll read through those articles and I'm like, that makes sense. Or sometimes I'm like, I don't know about that. But it's always great to have differing opinions, read differing opinions, and because we can't live in like an echo chamber, we have to embrace all ideas and strengthen our own from there. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And my last question for you would just be, what would you say to a student who maybe isn't sure about what y'all are doing on here, or maybe just has, might be on the fence about his or her own beliefs?
Well, I would definitely say to get involved, follow us at GC Turning Point on Instagram, join our group me, and just, you don't have to have like exactly the same ideas. You don't have to have like a political science major. You can just be you and just come voice your opinions and help us build a better community here. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on
you.
here, letting me ask you these questions. So coming up next, we have a great news segment hosted by our anchors. So yeah, thank you again. Back to you, anchors.
And we are back, Bobcats. Glad to see you haven't left. I'm James Beary.
And I'm Simran Puri. We're quickly cutting in with some current events in this week's weather report. The U.S. government is still in partial shutdown. As we hit day 9, there doesn't appear to be a solution on the horizon as both the Republican and Democratic parties hold their stances. We will continue to report updates as they receive. Milledgeville's mayoral elections are coming soon with early voting next week on October 14th. The candidates are including the incumbent mayor, Mary Parham Copeland, and the incumbent city alderman, Walter Reynolds. You can visit baldwincountyga.com to find your voting location.
In entertainment news, Sean Diddy Combs has officially been sentenced to over 4 years in federal prison, with his charges including 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. He was not granted eligibility for parole representing Netflix's new hit movie K-pop Demon Hunters. K-pop girl group Huntrix did their first live performance in an SNL skit with Bad Bunny. The movie's soundtrack has also been certified platinum, with over 1 million hits in the U.S. And Dolly Parton is putting rumors to rest. After discourse spread about the star falling ill, she posted a video letting America know not to worry and that she is good and healthy.
Upsets from the sports world hit Philadelphia and Buffalo hard as they lost their perfect records to Denver and New England. The Eagles taking a 21-17 loss from the Broncos, and the Bills losing 23-20 to the Patriots. While NFL storms the field, the MLB postseason is in full swing. The Blue Jays clinched their spot in the ALCS with their opponents either being the Detroit Tigers or Seattle Mariners. And even though the Braves aren't representing the National League this October, Milwaukee leads their series against Chicago, as well as the Dodgers leading their Phillies series 2-1.
Moving on, let's look at next week's weather. Friday kicks off with mostly cloudy skies and temperatures hovering at a high of 73 and a low of 53. It's a cooler start to the week, but still great for a stroll around campus. Saturday brings back that beautiful sunshine and a high of 77 with a low of 53.
Sunday stays right in that sweet spot with another high of 77 and a low of 53. The perfect weather for your Sunday reset, whether that's cleaning, relaxing, or getting ahead on assignments. Monday brings back the heat with a high of 80 and a low of 54. So grab your hoodie in the morning, but be ready to switch back to short sleeves by the afternoon. Tuesday is nice and sunny with a high of 81 and a low of 59.
Wednesday brings some clouds and humidity with a high of 84 and a low of 60. Thursday wraps up the week with more sun and temperatures holding steady at a high of 84 and a low of 60. So, another week of wishing for that fall breeze. Professor Nicholas Creel published a recent opinion piece on the New York Times. Here to talk with him about the process and his experience is Madelyn Agostini. Madelyn, take it away.
Welcome back. I'm Madelyn Agostini, and we're here with Behind the Bobcats with our very own Dr. Nicholas Creel, who recently wrote a New York Times article about his experience as a liberal professor as an advisor for the Turning Point USA chapter at Georgia College. Thank you, Dr. Creel, so much for sitting with us today.
No, happy to be here.
So first of all, you mentioned in your article that one of the Turning Point students wanted to start the program and asked you to advise it. What was that experience like, and what was your initial thought when he asked you?
Yeah, so really my first thought was kind of bewilderment. I was a little shocked, quite honestly, that he would ask about that. In fact, one of the first things I kind of remarked to him was, you know, I think I'm probably more likely to be a professor that's on the watch list that Turning Point is known for among faculty than I am to be the advisor. Mm-hmm. And he did kind of come back with a funny little quip to it, saying that he didn't care if I was a card-carrying communist. He was happy for me to do it so long as I was willing to sign the forms.
Right.
So we had a laugh about that and ultimately agreed to do it.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned that he just needed you to sign the forms. And so what was that first step for you guys when Turning Point first came to Georgia College? What was the initial intention behind it that you really wanted to push with Turning Point at Georgia College?
Well, it was less about what I was wanting to push for what they were going to do, and more my goal was just to allow students who had a particular point of view, an organization, to express that point of view. That's all I was really interested in. He had said he'd gone to other faculty members, hadn't found support yet. And there's a lot of reasons that might happen. I mean, sometimes, for instance, anybody could come up to me now and say, can you do another group? And no, my plate is too full.
Right.
And so whatever reason he couldn't. And so I saw that and thought, you know what, you've got a particular view. It's a big national organization. And even if I don't agree with it, it's a view that you guys hold and you want expressed on campus. So I'm going to do what I can to make sure that happens.
That's awesome. And you also mentioned in your article that your direct intention with Turning Point, and like you just mentioned, pushing that freedom of speech, allowing these students to express their feelings and their takes on these policies. And you mentioned that your intention is to bridge the divide that we have now between these two-party system. And so I'm curious about what your future plans are with the group, or if you and the co-presidents have talked about any plans that maybe involve a conversation between those two differing parties, or just, experiencing those, hearing those.
Well, I'd start out by saying my initial intent wasn't about bridging divides. That's something that came out later.
Okay.
So the first founding president ultimately ended up taking a class with me. We had a really good experience. Business ethics is a class where there's a lot of inherent political values that are kind of infused in decisions. And so, I had a 15-week front row seat to the students, dialogue with students he disagreed with, and saw it. And ultimately, I saw a gem of hope there, that there might be some really good way to have that kind of engagement. But then once he had left my class, again, going back to the whole, I know I'm not really a natural bedfellow with this kind of a group. I thought I was probably just going to be a guy who signed forms and nothing else on it. And then, of course, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I reached out to the current president, and it was just a small passing comment she had made at the end of the conversation. We had already kind of concluded the vigil went well, the security was there, that I had made sure to arrange for. And she had said, I just wanted to say, it's kind of embarrassing, I just wanted to say, I always, when I look and see your articles out there, I always click on and read them. I really like reading your stuff.
That's awesome.
Which kind of blew me away, because I'm overtly very liberal in almost 90% or so of these op-eds that I put out. And so seeing that really made me think, wow, this is another example of a person who's actively seeking, she's out there seeking intellectual engagement with people she disagrees with.
Right.
And so that to me has now given me hope to the future, to where I am potentially thinking, in a way that's respectful to the group. I don't want to come in and be seen as somebody who's pushing liberal views.
Absolutely.
But I do think it could be good to say, hey, maybe you guys set up something with campus Democrats and you guys have a debate amongst yourselves. It's not me getting involved so much as it's helping maybe facilitate engagement with other groups. So that's something I would like to see in the near term.
That would be awesome. I would love to see that as well. Definitely would be reporting on that one, so you can keep that out. Keep an eye out for that. And you mentioned getting the security for the vigil that you all had for Charlie Kirk. Was there anything that really just pushed that idea for you, that you thought, like, we should have this here, make these students feel safe?
Well, I had no reason to expect anything might go wrong. And so that's, one of the things is, in my mind, I was weighing back and forth whether I should even ask about it. Sometimes, some people might read the idea of, security showing up and it might make them more apprehensive. It might make them feel safer. But in the end, I thought it over, asked a couple other people what their opinions were, and decided, it's probably better to just have them there just in case, make them feel better to see that security presence. Knowing that, again, Charlie Kirk was a person who was divisive in society. He's somebody, most people had strong opinions on the guy.
Right.
And so knowing that alone, I thought, there's at least the outside chance that somebody shows up and tries to do something a little unwise in the moment. And so in case that happens, I thought it would be better to have them there. And ultimately, it was expressed to me that they were glad that people was there, that they felt more comforted by having them there than not.
That's awesome. That's great. And you also previously just mentioned that one of the co-presidents, Mia, mentioned to you that she really enjoys reading your opinion articles. And I was really fascinated to read that in your article as well. And she also mentioned with Andrew that you guys have only met over the phone.
Yeah.
And you have
phone,
really
email,
had not any. Yeah.
Text, that's it.
That's really interesting to hear that as well. But so I guess what my question is, what did you really feel when you were writing about, reflecting on the fact that Mia is reading your articles? And do you think that there may be other Turning Point members that are taking the time to read them as well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my thought was pride in our students. So one of the reasons I haven't met her, she's in the College of Arts and Sciences, I'm in the College of Business. So, I mean, she would never pass through in daily life. And also it's still fairly early into the semester when this had all started, to where there just weren't a lot of natural points of which we would have interacted on there. But hearing her say that, it really did make me think, one of the things we really hope we achieve in students as a finished product, thinking of students almost as a product here, but we really hope that they're willing to take themselves outside of echo chambers and listen and hear and engage with, in an honest way, the opposition, because we're not always going to be right. And even if we are right, we I think are better off understanding where other people come from. And so having seen that was really, my first thought was just kind of an immense sense of pride. And not only that, in the moment too, you have to consider, this is, a few days after Kirk has been shot. Most of the people who were associated with Turning Point or are on the right side of the spectrum were understandably upset by this, quite upset.
Right.
And the last thing most people, when they're angry or thinking about, is this little comment about bridging a divide, which is what she put out there. She took time out of that conversation to specifically put it out there.
That's awesome.
And so to me, I really just thought, wow, this is something that I do hope that it's going on. And I hope that there are people on the campus Democrats that are out there reading the opposition as well, because that's I think a feature that we really ought to be pushing, is that kind of engagement.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this, back and forth, sharing that, our opinions and conversing, having these conversations. There has been a lot of discourse around your article, both in the comments of the New York Times and other places on Facebook, LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. Is it presenting itself, the discourse in general, the positive, the negative, like kind of how you expected it to, or did it take a turn? Has anything really caught your eye that was kind of unexpected?
I really didn't know what to expect at first. There was a lot of apprehension. I did not sleep the night before going on, just knowing. I, if anything, thought maybe there would be more pushback than there was. The thing that kind of surprised me most was how most conservatives seemed to be almost glowing in their positivity regarding this. They were quite happy to see this. And I think now, looking back on it, it's easier to explain things after the fact than to guess where it's going to go. Looking back on it now, I think I can understand why. Higher ed is generally known for having a lot of liberals, and I'm a self-avowed one. That's literally in the title of it, right?
Right.
And so, a lot of the distrust that has come in higher education in the last decade or so has come from the right, because they view a lot of professors as being closed off, that shut down the opposition. And so here they had an example of somebody who's actively helping nurture the opposition. And so I think to them, it was a really good example of something they wanted to see more of. And if anything, I think it really helps us with a lot of those individuals increase trust. Where pushback came was almost universally on the further left side of the spectrum, where a lot of people did take issue with the organization itself for reasons I do understand, but ultimately on principle, unrelated to that, disagreed with. And so a lot of it was that professor watch list issue that most people had problems with.
Yeah. And so I guess my next question kind of leads me into that. You mentioned this professor watch list and kind of how there's a lot of policies on that right side that you clearly do not agree with. Is there any line that you're not really letting the Turning Point group, like you're not willing to let them cross, for you personally, or anything like politically, morally, anything like that?
I mean, generally speaking, my line in the sand is the legal line. That's the way I try to approach it. I'm a professor of business law. Constitutional law is one of my main specialties. And so with that, we've got this old Brandenburg standard of, speech is allowed and acceptable up into the point that you're calling for imminent lawless action, and that action is likely to happen based on your call for it.
Right.
So if I ever saw something like that, regardless of the group, that is a line in the sand. I think because we're also in an educational institution, the line is a little bit more shy of that in some instances, because it's the idea of, if something I truly thought was going to severely disrupt the learning environment, I might have that conversation and see if there's a way to head it off, whatever it was that might do that. Because we do have an important mission that is more than just solely advancing speech. We also have to educate people. In ways that have nothing to do with politics, right? Our mathematics and physics departments have to operate in ways that are independent of that. So if anything was going to happen in any institution, any student organization, that would disrupt the learning environment, that's where I might start saying is, I would at least be having conversations about, are there ways to maybe do something else? But I would never try to dictate that if I could. That's for somebody higher up my pay grade than myself. Mine is, again, maybe just to find that impasse. Maybe we can find a way to prevent it from becoming a bigger problem.
It's very interesting. I really appreciate your answer on that. Thank you. And I guess also just with you being so inherently, self-defined liberal, has your opinions changed with any of these conversations that you've had with Mia or Lauren or any of the other Turning Point USA members, or even just having that new perspective on Turning Point as a whole? Has it changed any of your opinions on any policies or anything like that?
Well, not on policies, I would say, but more on the view to Turning Point itself. Before my interactions with Hayden and then later Mia and now Lauren, it was one that was probably fairly similar to a lot of the faculty who around the country who have been unhappy with me sponsoring the group. Because I do understand how getting on that watch list can be something that can upend your life. People get doxxed, they get threats to their home, their life, to where that is extraordinarily problematic. That is something I would absolutely condemn on there. But now I'm looking at seeing, there's what's true in isolated instances in other places, then there's what's true here. And I really now am looking at our chapter as, I think, special. It's one that I know for sure exemplifies what we hope people who disagree with us are. And that, they're good people, they're good-natured people, they're not in just a self-defined echo chamber. So I've really come away with a very strong opinion, of positive opinion of the students that we have here in our chapter, to where if I heard another faculty member talking down about Turning Point, I would say, look, I think you better not cast everybody out at once. Look at the individuals, because not every chapter is going to be the same. And there's definitely some really great examples of some awesome students out there.
Awesome. That is great. Great answers. Thank you. Thank you. And I guess my final question would just have to be, what has been the most challenging part for you working, opposite from your fellow professors, or sometimes even what you're teaching in classes? Like, what has that hardest part been for you?
Well, I guess the hardest part is, one thing I've always prided myself on is that I keep my politics out of the classroom. It's something I don't let them know. In fact, in business ethics, we have an assignment where at one point late in the semester, they try to guess my ideology when we talk about how ideology and like value systems and philosophy that we've studied overlap and relate. And they never get anywhere close to right. Most of them think I'm pretty conservative and maybe even a little authoritarian. But in reality, like if you take the political compass test, I'm fairly liberal and I'm fairly libertarian. And so it's kind of, it's a thing I've prided myself that they really systematically get that wrong.
Yeah.
Because I make such a point of not letting it bleed in. But now I've written this article for the New York Times, and there's these things that are coming up, to where now it's one of those things that I think the challenge is going to be making sure that that barrier is still up. And with students not seeing it as a way that, oh, well, he's just this biased professor in this way. Because I really try to work very hard to not let that happen. They should never know my own politics based on what happens in the classroom. But now something outside of the classroom has happened that might inadvertently mess with that. And so that is my biggest worry at this point.
That's awesome. That's great to hear that you are, making that initiative and being able to take part of something like this being published in the New York Times while still keeping that separate from the classroom is really inspirational. Thank you again for sitting down here with us. We are so happy to have Dr. Creel and Mia sit down with us on GC360 this week. Make sure you guys tune in again next week on NBC TV4 at Thursday, 4 p.m. and stay updated with us on our social medias at GC360 News on Instagram and YouTube. We'll see you guys next week.
Gather around, gather around.
This is GC360.
No. This is a new segment. This is Behind the Bobcats.